So I don't know whether it's me or you guys, but you see, we often seem to have very long and considered debates, but they're always terribly fruitful and respectful, and I don't think tonight was any different. So I want to thank senators in all sides of this House for their considered contributions. I want to join with all of you in noting, with all sincerity, that it has been a very respectful debate. And I'm nearly getting worried now that respectful is becoming cliched, and it shouldn't, because it's so important. And we've managed so far to have this bill move through through the Dáil, and now move through the Seanad. We've had debates at Oireachtas committees, and I think generally the tone of the debate has been encouraging. We can absolutely passionately disagree on this without calling each other names or labels or having a go at each other in a very personal fact. And I wasn't around in 1983, but I do remain somewhat hopeful that the people that I meet, the people outside of this Leinster House bubble, they certainly don't want people going at each other and shouting at each other and calling each other names. This is a deeply personal, private matter for citizens to decide on, and I think there's a duty on all of us to advocate in accordance with our own conscience as public representatives and let the people of Ireland decide. So there's people who've expressed views in this debate tonight which I fundamentally disagree with, but I fundamentally respect them. I consider many of them friends, and I want to thank them for doing that as well. We don't need herd mentalities in these debates. It's important that people have their views, because there are different views in Irish society in relation to this issue. So I acknowledge that, and I don't think any of you who vote against it are anti-democratic. I do think it's somewhat peculiar. I've described it that before, but that's just my perspective. That's why I voted for it in my role as a member of the Dáil. People in this House have their right to cast their vote as well. But I'm cautiously optimistic people of Ireland are going to have their say on this issue, and I think there's a general acceptance around this House, regardless of your perspective, that that's highly likely to be the outcome. This is a tough issue. It's a tough issue. Who likes talking about this issue? This is a tough issue. It's a very personal, sensitive issue to do with a very personal, sensitive topic. But we have to discuss it, because we have a role as legislators, and because it's in our constitution. The only way we can address the issue is by way of the people of Ireland having their say. So I've heard colleagues agonise over this, but as much as we're agonising over it, it's nothing like the agony that the women who experience crisis pregnancies in this country have faced since the introduction of the 8th Amendment, and that's why I believe passionately that it must be repealed, and that's my very strong view. I want to join with others in acknowledging the leadership that has been provided by many colleagues through a very long process. When people talk about this being rushed, I think that's kind of bizarre, because it's been a very lengthy, thorough process with the Citizens' Assembly, the Oireachtas Committee, commending my colleague Senator Noon for her chairmanship, but all members of this House who were on it, all members of the other House who were on it, the leadership that I've seen in individual political parties, the leadership that I've seen from individual leaders of different political parties. On a cross-party basis, people have stepped up and they have shown leadership. And we've had people who've had very sincere views on this all their lives, who remain steadfast to that. We have people whose views have changed on this, and we should respect that as well. It shouldn't be viewed as a U-turn or any sort of flip-flop when people follow the evidence, talk to clinicians and change their mind. That's also an important part of the democratic process as well. But as much as I'm proud of all of my colleagues for the leadership that people have shown in arriving at this point, let's not fool ourselves. The reason we're here is not because of political leadership. It's because of people like Amanda Mellett. It's because of people like Siobhan Whelan. It's because of people like Savita. It's because of Miss A, Miss B, Miss C, Miss D, Miss P, Miss X. It's because of the families involved in terminations for medical reasons. It's because of all of the people who have bravely come forward and told their stories, who had to tell their private stories, who felt they had to tell their private stories so we could greater understand their agony and the unfairness of the current system. But it's not just those who told their stories. It's the many more thousands of people who've never told their stories. And when you go out and canvass, whether it's for a Tá or a Neil, be conscious as you ring that doorbell that you don't know the person who you're talking to and what they've been through, because it is not possible to have that many Irish people travel abroad since 1983, and we know the figures, at least 160,000, and we know that's likely to be a significant underestimation. It's not possible to have thousands of women a year in Ireland taking the abortion pill without, every time you knock on a door or every time you go into a housing stage, or every time you go up a Boreen or a laneway in a village, and this is not just something in urban areas, these urbane Dublin people, as I sometimes hear, it's a nationwide issue. And you're going to come across people who have their story that may not have been told. So let's be very respectful and conscious of that. And it is for all those people that I've mentioned, the names we know, the names that have become household names, sadly, in many ways in relation to this, and the names we don't know. It's for them that we do this because, in my view, they deserve better. And I'm conscious, I'm very, very conscious, as many senators have alluded to, that people out there have concerns. They have legitimate concerns, and it's appropriate that they put those concerns to us and that those of us who are proposing a change endeavour to answer those concerns. And what I would say to them today is the reason we're bringing forward draft legislation that is comprehensive, is to provide them with an indication as to where the law will go in this area. And I would ask them to remember this, and I would ask all of us to remember this. This legislation didn't drop from the sky. This legislation wasn't magicked up quickly by any minister or any government or any one politician or any one party. This was the best thinking of a cross-party grouping of public representatives who spent months, which many of us didn't, sitting in effectively a basement in Leinster House, hearing evidence, hearing the best academic, clinical, medical, legal evidence to come up with this. Then that was further stress-tested, if you like, or finessed through Oireachtas debates, through the government process, through a policy paper, and now the legislation. So it's easy to say, I'd vote for something else if you came up with a different proposition. And that's a perfectly valid position to have. But for those who wish to say that, I'm going to challenge you during the debate to tell me what your different proposition would be. Because it's not that straightforward. And we've seen that in recent weeks when people have tried to come up with alternative propositions, how difficult that is when you actually try to work your way through that. And to those who say, there's no great certainty, Minister, you're bringing forward legislation. How do we know that legislation will pass? You can say that about any referendum. There was scaremongering around the marriage equality in the legislation. We've had to pass legislation in relation to the children's referendum. Governments change. Elections happen. In every referendum, there's legislation that follows. And in every referendum, that legislation then goes through the Houses of the Oireachtas. So the argument you make on this is the same argument one can make on any referendum. And I would make the point, and I really hope people see this as they get an opportunity to look through the detail of the legislation. I don't support abortion on demand. And I don't believe what we have proposed is in any way, shape or form abortion on demand, apart from the fact that that makes me shudder even saying that phrase. What we actually have put in place here is a proposal for a very considered, regulated, supervised and safe medical environment for a woman to access healthcare, which she is already accessing. What we have today in Ireland, is unregulated, unrestricted abortion. Through this. We have people ordering abortion pills through this. If that was your daughter, if that was your wife, if that was your sister, if that was your mother, would you want them to access that medicine through a doctor with a very deliberative process, the 72-hour period, all of their options outlined, a proper consultation, knowing the quality of the medication, or would you want them operating through this? That's the choice. It's not about whether you're in favour or against the abortion pill. It's here. It's about whether you're in favour of them getting the abortion pill through their smartphone and on post, or through doctor surgery. And this is not a debate. This is not a debate about whether you're in favour or against abortion. It's not a debate about whether you're in favour or against abortion. This is a debate, in my view, about whether you want to put in place a safe and legal system or leave in place an unsafe and illegal system. But you're not introducing or stopping the introduction of abortion in Ireland. If only it were that simple. That's not what the debate's about. It's here. And don't let any of us fall into this debate of making these women faceless and nameless. They live in your county, they live in your town, they might even live in your family. It's here. So how are we going to make it safe? And people talk about certainty. There is a lot of certainty in a no vote. Nothing will change. In a no vote, we will not be able to do anything for a rape victim. We will not be able to do anything for a parent carrying a much-loved and much-wanted child, despite what people ignorantly say, who has a fatal fetal abnormality. We will not be able to do anything about the abortion pills. We'll not be able to address the concerns of the masters of our maternity hospitals or the Institute of Gynaecologists and Obstetricians, the people that you would trust to deliver your baby or to deliver your wife's baby. So, yes, there is certainty in a no vote. It's for the people of Ireland to decide if that's the sort of certainty they want. And I'll respect whatever decision they make in that regard. And I do welcome, even those colleagues who have a different view from me on the Eighth Amendment, I do welcome the acknowledgement by some, not all, but by some, that we are today announcing what I believe is the most holistic and comprehensive package of supports for our maternity services and for women in crisis pregnancy in recent time, if not ever. If not ever. We are making sure that the woman who makes that choice, as many women will, to go to full term with her pregnancy knowing that her baby will die within hours or days. That's a valid choice many women will make, and we're not supporting those women well enough. And that's why we're putting in proposals in relation to perinatal hospice care. That's why we're making sure that women have better access to scanning. That's why we're making sure that we can do something on contraception so we reduce the number of crisis pregnancies in Ireland. And I really do hope, I really hope, and I don't mean this about people in this House, or I hope not, I really do hope those who are campaigning to retain the Eighth Amendment will at the very least welcome the fact that broader access to contraception is a good thing if you want to reduce crisis pregnancy, because their silence on the issue has been deafening. Surely, whether you're in favour or against the Eighth Amendment, the idea of trying to reduce crisis pregnancies in the first place and providing better sex ed for our kids and better access to contraception is a good thing. And I've yet to hear people who wish to retain the Eighth Amendment outside of this House welcome that. And I hope we can at least unify in relation to that as well. And the final point I'd make this evening, Cahirlock, I hear a lot about protection. What protection is there from the unborn, for the unborn? And I'd want to hear that too, by the way, because we all want to protect life. We all want to protect life. I don't believe we're divided in relation to that. It might suit us at times to pretend we're divided in relation to that. There's no one in here more pro-life or anti-life. I mean, it's just ridiculous. We're all pro-life, all sorts of life. The issue, though, here is, what sort of protections are there? Well, in addition to some of the details that I've published today, about a doctor on the health grounds having to assess viability and deliver if viability is there, effectively putting a ban on late-term abortions that is not in place in the UK. So perhaps those pretending we're introducing the most liberal regime and all this nonsense could acknowledge that. There will be an effective ban on late-term abortions that does not exist in the neighbouring island of the UK. And when people read the legislation, they will see that. And when they talk to the Institute of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists, rather than pretending to be obstetricians and gynaecologists, they will recognise that as well. There's protections about two doctors. That not only do you need a woman consenting, the woman saying, yes, there is a serious risk to my health, then there needs to be another a doctor who says it, and there then needs to be another doctor. And at least one of those doctors needs to be an obstetrician, and the other doctor needs to be a clinical expert in that area. There'll be clinical guidelines that will talk about what do doctors do in different situations, drawn up by the ICGP and the Institute of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists. The Supreme Court itself, and this is very rarely quoted, the Supreme Court itself said just because the way it's adjudicated in the recent case did not mean that the unborn was constitutionally or legally invisible. A direct phrase from the judgment. And it references the common good and how all laws passed by these houses must address the common good, something that is not addressed by opponents of this proposal. But you know what the greatest protection the unborn has? Women. Mothers. Mothers and women protect their babies. They don't need people to protect the unborn from their mother. I trust mothers, and I trust women, and I trust Irish women. And I believe the Irish people trust Irish women and trust Irish doctors. And I think what we need to do in this House of the Oireachtas is stop talking to each other shortly and let the Irish people talk to each other. Let's have a respectful debate. Let's tease out the issues. Let's be vigorous in our arguments but respectful in how we put them. And let's provide, in my view, the people of Ireland with their chance to have their say by the end of May. And I thank the Seanad for all your time and consideration of this issue. Good morning.